I know that you had a great Thanksgiving, and I hope that you and the family are enjoying your holiday season. So it's going to. All right, and we are going live in exactly 10 seconds. So I am going to, not that you need an introduction, but I am going to give you one as always. Good day, and thank you for tuning in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. For all of our new listeners and viewers who are tuning in for the very first time, I'm Pastor Pope, and with us today, as always, our 3D monthly contributor, Rebecca Boova, licensed and registered dietitian and nutritionist. So we are going to get ready to get into the broadcast, but before we do, a little business with the public. Today's Daily Divine Direction broadcast is brought to you by Fiji Water, Earth's finest water. You may already know that Fiji water comes from Fiji. However, did you know that it is created by nature? It is untouched by man. It starts as a tropical rainfall which slowly filters through layers of volcanic rock. The water collects in a natural artesian aquifer where it is bottled right at the source, free from human contact until you unscrew the cap. Fiji Water, Earth's finest water, will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery. And you'll save money at FijiWater.com. This is Earth's finest water. And as I announced at the very beginning of the broadcast, with us today, as always, our monthly contributor Rebecca Boova, licensed and registered dietitian and nutritionist, more commonly known now as BeccaTheDietitian.com. Becca is with us today. So glad to have you with us, Becca. Hello.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks again, Pastor Pope.
And always a pleasure. Becca is here with us to ensure that we are all well in our body, mind, and spirit. So I'm going to begin, Becca, by, if you will, just share with our listeners and viewers what you wanted to discuss with us for this month, and then we'll begin with the questions that all of our listeners and viewers have for you, and there have been so many of them. So I am just thankful for everyone's participation and engagement as she continues to share with us knowledge. This is my favorite day of the month.
Me too. So I'm so excited to get to the questions from the viewers, but first I did just want to start out with a little tidbit about how to stay healthy around the holiday season. So hopefully everyone had a nice and healthy and safe Thanksgiving this year. I know the holidays are looking a little different than years past, but hopefully everyone was still able to find a little bit of enjoyment and relaxation on that day, and then in the coming holidays that we're going to be celebrating as well. So there is well, you may know this or not, but a lot of people tend to believe that there is an association with the holiday season and weight gain. So many people think that, there's like you're bound to gain like 5 pounds or 10 pounds around the holidays. So there was actually a study a few years back that looked at weight gain of Americans between Thanksgiving and New Year's, and they found that weight gain was actually closer to only a pound between Thanksgiving and New Year's. So that's good news. It was only about a pound versus 5 or 10 pounds. But the bad news is we tend to not lose that pound the year following, and then we tend to continue to gain a little bit of weight in the holiday season each year, and it compounds so that, in 5 or 10 years you find that you're a lot heavier than maybe you were a few years ago. So the issue is not necessarily that small weight gain during that period of time. It's the fact that we're not able to lose it, in the days and the weeks and the months after the holiday season. So the CDC has some guidelines on how to follow how to have a healthier holiday season. They have lots of different things about managing stress, staying warm, washing your hands, wearing a seatbelt. They also have tips on, make sure you're eating healthy and staying active. And they have a little bit of detail about that, but I'd like to go into, some more detail about how to do that this holiday season specifically. So I just have a few tips that I want to share.
And I hope everyone's writing this down, because this is real important, because I know I tend to have that weight fluctuation also. So thank you for sharing this.
Yeah. So I just have 10 quick tips. Some are tips that you might have heard other places. A few are just ones that I came up with on my own. So I will go ahead and share those now. So the first thing is to, at your holiday meals, but also every meal that you're eating, we want to try and follow the plate method. So I've mentioned this before, where the plate method is basically half of your plate should be filled with non-starchy vegetables, a quarter of your starch or your carbs, and then a quarter of your lean proteins. So that's the ideal way that we want all of our meals to look. So anytime you have side dishes, so we want to be trying to opt for fresh vegetables rather than casseroles, because casseroles tend to have a lot of fatty additives and high salt additives in them. So using fresh veggies instead of doing those types of casseroles is a lower calorie, healthier option. We also want to try to limit appetizers. And then if you are going to have appetizers, make sure you go for the healthier options. So maybe have like a crudité board with more vegetables, less meats and cheeses, just because we tend to fill up on those high calorie appetizers and then you're ready to sit down for a full meal. So a lot of times you'll end up overeating. So maybe try and go for some lower calorie, healthier appetizers if you're going to have any at all. Another point would be to limit alcohol intake, especially of sugary mixed drinks. So if you are going to indulge in a libation around the holidays, that's totally fine. Maybe just go for a lower calorie, lower sugar option like a spritzer or something instead of, a very sugary, fatty eggnog or something like that. We also want to make sure we're always getting plenty of fluid intake, mainly from water. We want to try and stay active and increase your activity levels if you already are active. It can be tough in the winter months, but maybe something you could try would be an at-home YouTube video that you can pull up on your TV or on your tablet screen that you can do just in your living space. Maybe try walking in shopping malls. That's a good warm space to do that in the winter. Things might be a little bit different this year as far as the mall availability. So maybe try and check out YouTube videos. They have lots of stuff out there for stuff you can do at home. And with, not necessarily gym equipment, but things that you could find in your home to use for weights and things like that. Another point would be to cook at home more, go out to eat less, and order out less. So, definitely we want to try and find a balance this year because we do want to try and support the local restaurants by ordering out, but maybe just try and order healthier options if possible. We also want to try and avoid giving unhealthy foods as gifts. So I know at the holiday season we tend to get, chocolates and cookies and pies from neighbors, but instead of giving those out as gifts, try and give something healthier or something that you wouldn't eat as a gift, maybe a homemade candle or something instead. If you do have recipes that you make every holiday season, like, your grandmother's cookie recipe or whatever, try and maybe instead of doing the full recipe, do a half recipe. That way you still get to enjoy that thing that you like every year at Christmas time or whatever you celebrate, but you just have a little bit less than in the past. You can also use smart substitutions for your recipes, so maybe cut the sugar in half, use stevia instead of sugar. There's lots of smart substitutions you can make that are available online if you look that up. And then the last thing would be if you want to still enjoy your holiday favorites, try it with a healthier twist. So for me, I love the Starbucks holiday drink. So whenever I go, I just say no whipped cream and do half of the sweetener flavoring instead of the full amount that they usually do. So those are just my 10 quick holiday tips to be healthier.
So I want to say this to all of our listeners and viewers. You notice that Becca did not just give us things that we shouldn't do, but walked us through scenarios that we could really enhance what we're going to do to have healthy homes for the holidays. So thank you for walking us through that. And I want to also remind everyone, Becca gives us a recipe every month, but I'm also going to impose on my dear friend and ask her to also send those 10 tips so that we can have them posted on both our Facebook account and on our app for everyone to go back and review, because these are important tips that you just gave us. I was listening to you walk us through all of this, and I'm saying how important it is that we have these tips so that we can get this right and make certain that we don't gain additional pounds over the holidays. So thank you for walking us through that. And I'm also going to say that, one of the things that we encourage everyone, and I'm not going to get ahead of myself because this will take us into one of the listeners and viewers' questions for today. But one of the things that we have to be mindful of is that we want to create a healthier lifestyle. And that's what Becca's been doing with us every single month. So I'm encouraging everyone, make certain that you go to her new website, Becca the Dietitian, and you will find information that will clearly enhance your health and wellness. So thank you very much, Becca. I'm excited about your website. It's spectacular. It's really great. You've got a lot of good information, and I'm sure it will be good for all of our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, and I am going to be posting those 10 tips on my website in a blog post, and I'll be sure to share them with you as well.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so very, very much. And before we go to the questions from our listeners and viewers, I just want to remind everyone that this segment of the broadcast has been brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest nationwide 5G provider at no extra charge. So if you are not currently a T-Mobile customer, you may call or text now every day on the T-Mobile caller text line at 267-992-1424. We will place you over into our queue so that you can become a T-Mobile customer and experience America's largest nationwide 5G provider at no extra charge. Taxes and fees are included in your bill. And if you auto pay by attaching a credit card to your account, we will see a discount on your monthly bill at T-Mobile, America's largest nationwide 5G provider at no extra charge. So, Becca, I would like to address a communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers and allow you to take the time to respond. So, one of our listeners and viewers had a question: can you reverse high blood pressure without meds? And if so, what foods should you eat or not eat to address high blood pressure?
You can absolutely reverse high blood pressure without medication. So if your doctor has prescribed medications for you, you definitely want to listen to them and take them as instructed. There's certain criteria that, different people meet that might necessitate, them to take those medications.
Yes.
So depending on your other risk factors, your age, your sex, your past medical history of other issues, maybe your cholesterol levels. If you've got multiple different risk factors, they might want you to take those medications, but also make diet adjustments simultaneously. And then if you're doing all those things that your doctor tells you and making diet adjustments, you can hopefully, get off of those medications eventually. So food-wise, you definitely want to stay away from salt. That is the number one thing for making your blood pressure go up. So salty foods, not only adding salt whenever you're cooking or at the table, but avoiding foods that are high in salt. Fruits and vegetables, fresh foods, those aren't really going to have much salt in them unless you add them or they're processed. The big way that salt is added to food is in processing. It's added for flavor, but also to keep things shelf stable and to help, lessen contamination and potential bacteria that get into them. So anything that is in like a box or a bag or a package is probably going to have some salt in it. That's what makes it stable on the shelf for weeks or even months. So a good way, for canned foods, for example, if you want to kind of get some of that excess salt off, is to rinse your canned food out. And then other things you can do aside from cutting back on salt is also increasing your fluid intake, so making sure you're drinking lots of water, and also increasing your intake of potassium-rich foods. So that would be your fruits and veggies, so bananas, potatoes, things like that. Of course, if you have chronic kidney disease, you'll want to be careful of certain things as well. But if not, eating more potassium-rich foods is a great way. Increasing your fluid intake and then cutting back on the salt should help you out a lot.
Excellent. I'm glad you went through that because that was going to be my question. Are they capable of coming off their meds after following your guidance? And so that question has now been answered. And now we're going to address another communication from one of our listeners and viewers. And I'm curious about this also. So you mentioned about Starbucks. So we share that affection for Starbucks, although they're not one of our sponsors. And someday I hope they will be. But needless to say, I am a hot chocolate guy. I don't drink coffee. I do drink tea. But one of our listeners and viewers wanted to know, what are the benefits or the detriments to coffee versus tea? And that was the way they presented it to me. So I would ask that you could respond to that and give them some clarity on.
So the difference between coffee versus tea?
Yes.
Okay. So both of them actually have, a lot of antioxidants in them. So they're really good at fighting any free radicals that could be in our body, doing damage, causing things like cancer and heart disease. So it's actually a benefit to drink a coffee or a tea every day. In terms of which one is better, it's really going to be a personal preference. But it's also important to remember that they do contain caffeine. So you don't want to have too much of those types of things, especially if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. But for a normal, healthy person, having a coffee or tea every day is going to be a benefit as long as you're, not going overboard, of course.
Okay, and what would you say is the best way to drink coffee? Because that's a very interesting thought process about coffee versus tea. Of course, both having caffeine, but I think. So I'll use an example to make this real personal. So my father, God rest his soul, drank more coffee than any human being I've ever known. He drank coffee from the time he woke up in the morning until the time he went to bed at night. He brewed coffee all day long after becoming disabled. And that was his drink of choice. But he also drank it with a lot of sugar, added sugar, which can't be good for you. Okay. So,
there's a few points I'll make about that. First, certainly the added sugar is going to be an issue if you're drinking it all day, especially. If you have one coffee in the morning with a packet of sugar, that's one thing. But if you're drinking coffee throughout the day with a packet of sugar, that's going to end up being a lot of sugar by the end of the day.
Yes.
So that's definitely something we want to watch out for, is the added sugar. The next thing to keep in mind is that coffee is a diuretic. So it makes us, urinate. And in the process of doing that, it's going to dehydrate you. So if you're drinking coffee all day and you're not counteracting it with plenty of water or other fluids, you could end up getting pretty dehydrated. So that's also an important thing to keep in mind if you are an avid coffee drinker.
So that's a very interesting point. And I will ask this, is it better to drink it black than to drink it with, of course, added sugars and cream and all of that?
Again, that's going to be a personal preference. Black is going to be extremely low calorie, no added sugar. If you need a little bit of sweetness, it's okay to add a little bit of sugar or cream. I like to put almond milk or soy milk in my coffee just to kind of take the bitter edge off. I'm not really a black coffee kind of person.
Okay.
But so just, making sure you're not adding too much sugar and sweetened creamers. A lot of like the French vanilla and the hazelnut creamers tend to have sugar in them. So just, read a nutrition facts label, make sure it doesn't have too much added sugar, and if it does, just limit yourself to 1 cup a day.
Now you have to know that I hear I read a lot of communications from listeners and viewers and people talking about drinking coffee and, their addictions to certain things, whether it's food or coffee or whatever it might be. But so this is really the reason that I wanted Becca to really address this for all of us, because I'm not a coffee drinker, never have been. But one of the things that I heard you say is 1 cup of coffee could be good for you every day, or tea. However, it's not something that you want to drink continuously unless you're also drinking a lot of water, Fiji water. That was a subliminal message. But to say that so that we can just make certain that we are staying healthy and having good health and wellness throughout our daily lives. And so this is real important. So thank you for giving our listener and viewers good instruction to make certain that we are really having a good quality of life. So I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers. And the question was, Becca, what is the best diet for someone who does not want to break their resolution in the new year? And before you jump into that, I'm going to say thank you for tuning in, because this has to be a new listener and viewer, because if they were not, they would have heard us repeatedly saying that we don't make resolutions, because resolutions always tend to expire in the first 45 days of the new year. What we want you to do is set good goals. We want you to set smarter goals. We want you to set, well, as we've talked about, making certain that you're setting goals that are very specific and that they're measurable. So I'm going to now let Becca give you some insight on what you can do to ensure that you have a good diet that will last throughout the year and really enhance your health and wellness. So Becca, please.
Yeah, so we have actually talked in the past about setting SMART goals. So, and that's exactly what you just mentioned, Pastor Pope. So make them specific, make them measurable, make them achievable, relevant, and then time bound. So I believe you actually posted, that written out SMART goals definition on your Facebook page at one point.
Yes.
So maybe we can reshare that just to remind everybody, especially with the new year coming up.
Absolutely.
And then, any diet, you want it to be something that you know that you can stick with long term. So if you're going to completely change your diet drastically, do a total 180, you're probably not going to stick through with that long term. So it's really just about making small changes, in the days or weeks, getting used to that, and then continuing to adapt your diet or your lifestyle to be healthier and healthier as you get used to those different steps. So that's how you're going to find you're going to make better success that way, most likely, than if you just completely change your diet overnight and have to get used to something that you're just not on board with totally, even if you like the idea of it.
Absolutely. And that I really have to say to you, I really wanted them to hear you say it, because they probably get tired of hearing me say these things continuously over and over again. Here's directly from the mouth of the professional, Rebecca Boova, licensed dietitian and nutritionist, who is our monthly contributor, telling you essentially the same things that we've talked about previously, but we know that you're a new listener and viewer. So I will say that it's real important not to make such a drastic change immediately. You make the gradual changes, as Rebecca just went over with us, as Becca just said. If we just do the little things, I'm not going to preach, but I'm going to use a biblical reference that says it's the little foxes. It's the small things that we do that are going to make the difference. So, as we've talked about the smarter goals, and I love the idea that you said about resharing them so that everyone can review them again as we go into the new year, because this coming year, we've been in this pandemic, but this coming year, I am really looking forward to Becca taking us through the year that we can be really restored to great health or enhance what we're already doing. And I know I need to make some changes myself, so I'm going to be encouraging everyone else throughout the year as Becca walks us through our health and wellness, our diet, and our nutrition. So thank you very much for saying that, Becca, and for getting everyone on point. I do want to say this segment of the broadcast is brought to you by Charles Tyrwhitt, located in London, the UK. They also have stores in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and at the King of Prussia Mall in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So if you're in any of those areas, check their store hours, stop in at the retail stores. They have everything a man could possibly need. Shirts for men, ties for men, suits for men, and accessories. And right now, if you order from Charles Tyrwhitt, you can receive 4 high quality cotton shirts for $199 at ctshirts.com. And also right now, they have cashmere sweaters for men that are, if you buy 2, you get them for $179.50. So go online at ctshirts.com. And The White Company, located in London, the UK. They also have a store on Fifth Avenue in New York. So if you're in New York, stop in at the retail store, check their store hours. You can stop in. They have everything that you could possibly need. Home goods, clothing for men, women, and children. And if you're not in New York, you can order from The White Company at thewhitecompany.com. They too will ship and deliver right to your front door in an appropriate period of time. And so we're going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers. And the question, Becca, is what is so important about being on a gluten-free diet?
I get this question a lot, actually.
Oh, really?
So I do, yes. So gluten-free, low carb, those are some diets and terms that have become really popular in recent years. And a lot of the gluten-free diet centers around celiac disease or gluten intolerance. So unless you have one of those conditions, there's really no reason for you to avoid gluten. Gluten is a natural protein. It's got different nutrients in gluten-containing products like breads and grains and things that are really important that we actually need and benefit from. So there's really nothing wrong with gluten unless you have an allergy or a sensitivity to it. Now that being said, some people are finding a lot of success following low-carb diets if they have diabetes or they're trying to lose weight. But, you know, it's not right for everybody. So you just have to check with your doctor, work with a dietitian, make sure it's something that's going to be realistic and healthy for you to do. But as a whole, there's nothing wrong with gluten. There's nothing wrong with bread. If you like to eat those things, then there is always a way to incorporate them into your diet.
Okay, so I have to tell all of our listeners and viewers, this is why we have the expert, Becca Boova, licensed and registered dietitian and nutritionist with us every first Thursday of the month. You don't ever want to miss this. I would not have been able to answer that question for you. So this is why we have our monthly contributor. You can go on her website at Becca the Dietitian. Again, BeccaTheDietitian.com. You can find all the information that you could possibly need to be healthy and well. Now, I have to admit, Becca, I've been on your website because I want to get as much information as I possibly can to be healthy also. So I'm encouraging everyone, if you will, go on her website at Becca the Dietitian so that you can get all of the information you need. We've been connected with Facebook with Becca the Dietitian. That's going to be her new mantra now, is Becca the Dietitian. And I will say that to everyone, this is going to make certain that we're healthy body, mind, and spirit. So let's make certain that we go on her website. Let's make certain that we're all tuned in to receive the information. If you can be with us live on Facebook and on YouTube. If not, you can go back and review the broadcast, but we really want you to tune in every Thursday as you do. Continue tuning in so every first Thursday of the month so that you can be with us when we are joined by our monthly contributor, Becca the Dietitian. So I'm going to address one more question, if you don't mind, from one of our listeners and viewers who asked, what would be a healthy eating plan for someone who has gone through gastric bypass surgery? Once again, a question I would not be able to answer. So to you, Becca.
So a healthy diet for someone just having had gastric bypass surgery?
Yes, that's had gastric bypass surgery.
Okay, so yeah, so...
And maybe not recently, they didn't indicate in their communication, but just has had gastric bypass.
Yeah, so if you just had gastric bypass surgery, the point of that is to basically make your stomach smaller. So you're going to have less space in your stomach to eat and you're going to get full faster. But with that being said, your stomach is a muscle and it has the potential to shrink and expand. So once you've had that surgery, you want to make sure that you're very strict with your portion sizes as directed by your doctor and your dietitian that you've worked with from your gastric bypass. So typically I think it starts between 4 and 6 ounces and it might get up to 6 to 8 ounces. So you want to be very strict with that because if you eat more, you can expand your stomach and it might never get back to that same size that it was right after your surgery. So you always want to be very strict with that. You want to make sure that you continue to take your protein supplements that have been recommended to you by your doctor or your dietitian, whether you just had it a few months ago or if you're several years out. Something else you want to also keep up with is your vitamin supplementation. So usually iron, B12, calcium, a multivitamin, those are things that are pretty common after a gastric bypass surgery. You want to make sure you're continuing with those as well and having your levels checked regularly. So, it's not like you can change the way that you eat just because you've had that surgery. It doesn't mean you can eat cheeseburgers and cheesesteaks all the time just in smaller portions. You still want to be making healthy choices just